We are on.
Hey Gail,
Hey Jay, how are you?
good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Well,
I'm Gail Wolf, and this is Dr.
mm,
Jay Eaker, and this
hello.
is New Consciousness
Conscious
Now.
now.
Now, not
What a
later.
what a
Now,
sweet name.
indeed.
The
So
idea
cool.
being that there's consciousness that's sort of unfolding, and we were kind of talking about we're helping to sort of like the idea is helping to bring that consciousness present
Present.
now.
Taking old concepts or old ways of seeing the world and functioning in the world, and um, old paradigms, and essentially looking at new ways to approach these ideas and paradigms that are more in alignment with the new energy that's here now
Mm-hmm.
that we're operating in, because it's not the same as it was, even 2 years ago. So we're very much in a new world, and it takes a whole new perspective to operate in a new
Mm-hmm.
world. And that's what we're up to.
How do you think you're qualified to talk about such things?
That's a damn good question, Jay. You know what's cool about, here's the thing about qualifications, and I think that this is such a great segue and perfect question for what we're doing here, is that, and I don't mean to step on any toes by what I'm about to say, but honestly, in my summation of things, in the old energy, qualifications were always predicated on systems that were established, outside of the human body. So in other words, you'd had an educational system that said, you've achieved these and these and these grade points at these levels, therefore you are qualified to this and this and this. And so many of those
Mm-hmm.
qualifications did not take into account the maturity of the person, the actual how the person's people skills are. It's like, how many times have you gone to a doctor and that doctor's bedside manner is absolutely horrible,
Mm,
and they might be smart and know their medicines and stuff, but they can't relate to the person at all.
right.
And who knows? Anyway,
It helps if they can relate to you.
it helps if they can relate. It creates empathy. And there's the other thing that in the old energy we didn't really talk about much because it was considered to be too weird, but it's intuition. And
Mm-hmm.
intuition is the first sign of the of an acknowledgement of oneness, is really what intuition is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what opens you. Intuition is what opens you, essentially your sixth sense, where you tap into the world that is not tangible to the other five senses, or even to your own original thought, which
Mm-hmm.
means it's the gateway to that which is new or unprecedented or
Mm-hmm.
different, or what we are evolving into.
Does the
And
root
so
does the root of the word intuition mean that,
I
or
don't
have
know
any,
what that means.
like you
I actually
say
don't
you,
know.
you said that? Do you know that? Is there any being connected to oneness?
I
I'm
don't
looking
know.
up
It's
the
it's
origin and the meaning of the.
it's my well, that's my understanding of it, and that's my relationship with it. Which, again, you're at, the question of qualification. To me, it's how spiritually awake are you, or how open is a person um, to pick up on what's new and what's old.
I'm looking up the etymology of the word intuition.
Nice.
Let's see what it says. Not anything groundbreaking. It says late Middle Earth, denoting spiritual insight or immediate spiritual communication. From late Latin, intuition. From Latin, intuere, consider. So
To
not anything.
consider. Oh,
A thing, unconscious reasoning. A thing that, oh yeah. Nothing too, nothing too amazing. Sometimes when I look at words, I come across stuff that's like, oh, it comes from a word an old English word that means
it means this or that.
this, and that's
Yeah.
interesting. But anyway.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Intuition, my experience, like intuition, like you, by connecting with your body, by connecting with the sensations in your body, you like tap into the river of chi, like maybe we were talking about last time, and that gives you access. That's the same river of chi, the same that, animates everything and everyone. And so you tap into the sort of information that the universe, information of the universe.
yeah. And it's, to me, it's
And
like,
that transcends time and space. There's no time involved with that.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's where we have an increased intuition and an increase in our oneness, is that, for example, and this is one of the shifts that's gone on, is the Akashic records is no longer even a part of um our repertoire of what we
Mm-hmm.
use anymore.
That's what
The
you'd
whole
said, yeah.
idea of the Akashic records and past lives, because we have a more direct communion now from soul to soul, or from human to human,
Mm-hmm.
that this oneness is now complete. And so when you have or it's more complete than it was. And so intuition taps into really this entire field of wisdom that humanity has amassed since its inception. And
Mm-hmm.
like in this consciousness of humanity, you've also got, like the Buddha's consciousness is in there, Christ's consciousness is in there, Mohammed's
Mm-hmm.
consciousness is in there.
Mm-hmm.
All these masters that have walked the planet, Isis or
Mm-hmm.
Green Tara or White
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo Calf Woman, all these, like, it's all in the intuitive field, or the human
Mm-hmm.
collective soul field.
Mm-hmm.
And we have more direct access into that field of consciousness now than before.
Mm-hmm.
And, to me, those who can access that information and start to read the relationship that we have now between what we identify as being ourselves and that soul field, is essentially, to me, what is what intuition is, or what
Mm-hmm.
um, a person's ability to read that information or get information from that place is really what qualifies them, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, to
Mm-hmm. Right.
talk about this. And who judges
Right.
that? you know
Yeah.
I guess it would be the validity of the things that they talk about, and does it really jive with people or not? So
Right.
who knows? It's a very subjective time we're living in.
What that makes me think of, there's this, have you ever heard of the Institute of Heart Math?
Yes.
They're like this research and education organization, and they've been around for, I don't know, 30 years or something. And they've been like researching the heart, and, and stress and well-being and things like that, and how the heart's sort of like related to that, and health and healing, and how the heart's related to that. But, like that the heart has this field that sort of is the electromagnetic field that's generated by the heart is like, I can't remember how many, 6 times or 10 times stronger than that, than that's generated by the brain. Everyone's always all about how important the brain is, but the heart, generates this bigger field. But they did this research where, they did this research. What I was thinking about, they did this research where they like showed people, this experiment where they showed people images on a computer. Either they were like alarming, or, images that would stir you up somehow, graphic images somehow, or not, or images that were just sort of neutral, or not, not compelling in any way. And what they found was that people, and then they measured their they measured, were they monitoring the heart, monitoring their heart somehow. And what they found was that people's hearts responded to, frightening or graphic images, like 4 seconds or something like that before they were shown the image, before the computer even had decided what image to show them. Their heart was already responding to what image they were going to be shown.
Wow.
And so just as far as like there's a wisdom that we have access to that sort of transcends time, I guess, was the point of me
and the brain, for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure. Mm-hmm. I love it. Didn't they also do a study there at one point about, like, they figured out where the intuitive receptors are in the body, and there's like so many receptor sites or something for intuition in the brain, and I don't remember how they isolated this or discovered this, but then they started looking into the heart, and the heart actually had, it was something ridiculous, like 8 times the number of like intuitive receptors as the brain has. It was like not even close.
Huh.
That's where the most activity happened.
I don't know that. As far as intuitive receptors, you mean like memory? Was it like there's this what is it, mirror cells? Does that sound familiar? No, anyway.
Should be. I'm not sure. Honestly, I probably shouldn't even quote that because I don't recall what these cell sites are.
I was going to say,
I don't remember the experiment specifically.
I'm having trouble seeing like scientists be like, here's an intuition cell.
I found one. We got one. This is it.
These we're going to call intuition cells.
That's right. Nailed down. We got it.
Maybe, I don't know.
Who knows, man?
That makes me think of if the force is strong with you, it's because you have these little microscopic metachlorians, high count of these little critters in you.
That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's, I'll be honest, I think that there is a huge correlation. And you're the perfect person to bring this up to, with how you work and the river of chi and so forth. But I have a hypothesis or a sense that the more we allow and the more that we flow, the more that we accept and don't restrict or repel or resist, the more we're able to just accept and flow with anything and everything that comes to us. Not only are we more healthy, but we're also in a place where we can receive clearer intuitions than if we're in a place that we're resisting everything, or just not taking things in, or which also leads to better health and all kinds of things. Would you?
Well, yeah, there's like supposed to be this like flow of information through us where we're constantly being organized and reorganized, and there's ways that the second we come into this world, where we learn how to kind of like stop that up and stop that flow of energy through us. We learn to stick boulders in that river, and there's a physical manifestation of that. But there's like an identity that sort of goes along with that. Down the road, we're like acting based on this sort of like template that we picked up from the people, from the people that came before us. And we think that that's the prime, but it's kind of like unconscious. We're like reacting to that and responding to that template. It's kind of like stored in our system, out of a perceived need to survive, but it's kind of like largely unconscious. And so and that is like often where the thoughts are coming from, and that's what's controlling our behavior. And yeah, if you're all, wrapped up in that, then intuition probably gets drowned out by that, by the
Yeah.
voice that comes from that defensive thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can trust life and let the river of chi move through you. Certainly that intuition would become more of the dominant pattern generator. That would be the thing that you would
Pattern
been
generator. Yeah.
trained to, more than the template that we got from our parents and them from theirs. And
One of the things that have been getting shown pretty regularly over the last little while that I think is fascinating is how whatever you want to call it, our angels, our spirit guides, or who knows, these higher consciousnesses that come in, or the way higher consciousness happens, is it literally, it's like it has its own organizing intelligence and principle, and then it's like it takes a thought that we've had or an idea that's already in our brain and it melds it with another existing idea in our brain and adds maybe a little bit of a spin or a little bit of a flavor to those two ideas and brings them to a new point in the middle with this little new flavor added to it,
mm-hmm.
which isn't much, but the 2 points coming together and finding that third point in the middle creates a brand new concept that
Mm-hmm.
then takes a person's thinking in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that opens the doorway to another new concept being
Mm-hmm.
introduced by
Mm-hmm.
fusing that new thought with another existing thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we essentially evolve, is by
Mm-hmm.
taking existing thoughts, melding them together in ways that we hadn't thought of before.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us a whole new perspective and a new take on an existing reality. And there are some people that, where I've heard stories, and maybe you've heard the same, of people that have these spontaneous awakenings and
Right.
they don't know how to eat anymore. They don't know how to walk anymore. They need to
Oh.
learn all these new things
Mm-hmm.
over again. And that's where they have like too much brand new inserted into and too old of a
Oh.
template. And
Oh, interesting.
you
Right.
simply can't function anymore. There's too
Can't.
much of a split.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly in the work that I'm doing, yeah, like like the next step of your sort of evolution is always like right there. I find like what you're saying, I think about like people who come to me who, maybe they've done like an ayahuasca ceremony, that they went into the jungles of Peru with some shaman, and they got blasted like wide open, and some part of their consciousness, was just like residing
Just
way
didn't come
out
back.
there somewhere, or
Yep.
maybe part of it's still out there and they're still like downloading this information on some level. Or I don't know, people who do spiritual work who maybe aren't so connected to their bodies, maybe, who spend more of their time with their attention out there, and it's not getting integrated into the body, into this physical body on this physical plane. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's what my work is about. It's bio soul integration. It's about integrating that information into the body so you can share it on the planet. But
Absolutely.
certainly there are things, or I guess it could just happen, like an awakening of some sort. Certainly like a Kundalini awakening. Like my wife, she has this whole story about a Kundalini awakening that she experienced when she was 18 or something like that. And for a long time, it was pretty crazy. Like she could hear people's thoughts or feel people's thoughts on the subway in Boston. And then she got sick. She ended up with Lyme disease, and sort of like clear that like somehow Lyme disease was connected to that
Yep.
awakening, and the healing of the Lyme disease kind of dovetails with some converging of factors in her own evolution. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a brilliant point, and segues even a little bit into what we were talking about earlier is, the relationship between
Segways.
sickness and evolution, or
Right?
sickness and change. And it's
Seemed when
interesting.
I go
What's
ahead, go
that?
ahead, go ahead.
I had another interesting download into things in the last, well, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that I'm still putting some of the pieces together, but I think this might be a great place to talk about it. Is and I think this is interesting. Is that karma is also something else that's not here anymore. It's
Hmm.
gone. Like
What?
we have things are happening more and more instant right
Oh, it's
now,
like
where
instantaneous.
instantaneous.
Mm.
But one of the facets with that is karma is not only just in a in terms of like, this happens, or you did this or you did that, so therefore this is what happens back to you, or this is what you will experience. That
Mm-hmm.
also happens, if you think of it, karma is like an electrical circuit in a house, or any electrical
Okay.
circuit anywhere. Is
Okay.
that you have energy, or an intention, if you will, that is
Mm-hmm.
in motion, that is trying to
Mm-hmm.
get back to its original place, or
It's trying to
it's
complete
in
itself.
motion, and it will change, or it'll shift, whatever. But it's essentially a circuit or a loop,
Uh-huh.
right?
It's trying to complete itself, or it's trying
Trying to
to.
complete itself. And
Huh.
your karma is, there was an interruption in that circuit, so it
Mm.
gets held up, and now you got to
Mm-hmm.
open something somewhere to
Mm.
complete that circuit.
Mm.
So if you
Mm-hmm.
take this on more, that's kind of a macro vision. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you take it down into the micro vision, you take it into the way trauma gets stored in the body in terms of
Mm. Mm-hmm.
chemical, physical, or emotional trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have an impetus of energy, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
a punch in the arm for trauma,
Mm-hmm.
or you drink too much beer, or you have,
Mm-hmm.
you go through a breakup, or something emotionally challenging happens. There's energy that gets blocked up and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
complete its cycle, so it gets trapped in the
Mm-hmm.
cells of the body, and all of a sudden you've got
Mm-hmm.
discomfort and pain, and all these things that just people
Mm-hmm.
generally don't like and try to get away from, right?
Mm-hmm.
in in this new energy, or in this way of healing, like I said, I'm still put some of these pieces together. There is a balance of masculine and feminine inside every human being, and that if you balance the cells across a traumatized area of the body, if you
Mm-hmm.
balance the cells masculine and feminine in
Mm-hmm.
that area, it realigns with the person's divine blueprint, and it
Mm.
heals that area.
Hmm.
And so literally, if you can create, it's almost like a 2B oscillation in network chiropractic, where if you can get that figure eight going
Mm-hmm.
in like between a couple of cells, or
Mm-hmm.
energetically through a certain area, that area will reconcile itself. And it's all about balancing the poles of the
Mm.
masculine and feminine across that traumatized area.
For those who care, it would be 2C.
Two C. Okay, there we go.
For those who care.
For those who care, if there are any network docs out there that are
Right.
taking notes on this, oh, it's 2C oscillation. Okay.
Where this figure eight starts to form. I think it's 2C. Yeah. I mean, it's not 2B. I know that.
Okay. All right. So,
Right.
yeah. And
Interesting
if you
what
think,
your description of that. D.D. Palmer, the guy who created chiropractic, like he came up with this. It was he or his son that was talking about this subluxation. They basically described subluxation in terms of this safety pin cycle. A safety pin. It was like the shape of a safety pin. It was like how life force or life innate intelligence moves around through the safety pin cycle, and at some point that cycle gets disrupted or whatever, and that's how a
oh,
subluxation gets
that's
formed.
that's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, should I bring up the thing that I had mentioned earlier?
Yeah, sure.
It seems like when I mentioned it, you kind of were getting you were getting downloads as I was mentioning it. Is that true? seemed like you were getting stuff was starting to come through. But
Mhm.
what I had said was that, just from the work that I do and working with people and for the last 20 years, and seeing the sort of ups and downs of their healing journeys, and especially when people get sick, and sort of apropos to what's happening now with this coronavirus thing. But that I was saying, I think someday we'll discover that like getting sick isn't what we thought it was.
Yeah.
And there's a few things that sort of make me think that on some level, just intuitionally, I sense that when I'm working with people. But also there seems that there's objective sort of data to support that, like that the change in people's sort of transformation in people is a measurable thing, like you can measure tension in their body, and you can measure where their breath is and where their breath isn't. And you can measure like the words that they use to talk about their experience, and you can measure their posture, and you can measure a change in consciousness in that way that shows up in their body. But often after people have gotten sick, there's something that they're sort of like working on. Maybe tension builds up in their body, and then they get sick, whatever it is, a cold or the flu or whatever. And afterwards, there's a transformation. They have like digested that energy, and there's a shift in them on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, change in their consciousness. But that's always my sense. And I'm always kind of like looking for things to sort of support that, but I don't really find anyone in the sort of scientific world who really,
Yeah.
can
Well,
corroborate that. I'm always hoping
yeah,
that I'll find
I
someone in the scientific world that will like help corroborate that for me, but I never
what
see it.
I think that, when it comes to, I guess I got a thought on that
It's part of our
is
evolution, is that's my point.
I think it's totally evolutionary. I think all illness is all about evolution. And I think it's all about changing and becoming better rather than breaking us down.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe that energy is energy, and it's gonna do and react and act similarly, no matter what type of intelligence it is.
Mm.
And the way
Mm-hmm.
I mean this is that, if you
Mm-hmm.
go into the idea of, mental intelligence, emotional intelligence, um, uh, biological intelligence, soul intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
universal intelligence, if you're going into those forms of energy, um, then you have, for example, if you have a person who is depressed or goes through like a breakup or a deep emotional challenging event, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have all this built up energy of hope, of desire, of dream that gets created in the formation of the
Mm-hmm.
relationship or the formation of whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
that you're endeavoring into.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever it is that then the relationship or whatever it is you're creating all of a sudden explodes or disappears. All that built up energy that's in the person's field all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
collapses. And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden you go, vroom, you're depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that all the creative impetus, all of the energy, all that was being created, and the cycle was going. It was all going. It was all circulating through. It's like it's all happening. The
Mm-hmm.
relationship's going. It's working.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the energy is still cycling, and all of a sudden it stops,
Mm-hmm.
and so that energy collapses. And my thought is
A
that
rug gets pulled out from
the
underneath you
rug gets
somehow.
pulled out,
Mm.
and sickness, to me, operates in a similar sort of way. Is that the system's up, the system's going, things are operating, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But there are systems that we are unaware of. How often
Mm.
do we think about our blood pumping through our veins? Or how often do we think
Mm-hmm.
about, boy, my nervous system sure is working well today? Or,
Right.
you know, like who does that? Nobody,
Mm-hmm.
you don't feel into these sorts of
Thank God
things
we don't
because
have to
they're
rely on our
they're
mental
just,
intelligence to run those things.
this stuff is all automatic,
We'd be screwed.
which if, if, if this stuff is automatic, does it not stand to reason there's something that it's automated to, that that
Mm-hmm.
is that is like saying, okay, this is this is like Dr. J's biological functioning system,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the perfect optimal way for it to run.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through life for a while, and it's running okay, but then at some point there's like a decision made outside
Mm-hmm.
of like what your thinking is that
Mm-hmm.
goes, I think we're ready for some improvements around here. We want
Mm-hmm.
to we could do a little bit better in this department, we could do a little bit better in that department.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk to these other parts of Jay and find out what's going on, if this is something he really wants to go through. Oh, he said yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Bam. Now there's a sickness.
Right.
All that was created before all of a sudden collapses so that the
Mm-hmm.
body can go into like a hibernation mode
Right.
and rejuvenate and rebuild itself.
Right.
It's like the collapsing of the two separate points to
Mm-hmm.
create the third one.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it true that like scar tissue is also stronger than regular cells? Regular,
Hmm. I don't
there's
know.
something to
I've heard them say that about if you break a bone, when a bone heals,
okay,
that is definitely like stronger than.
comes
I
back
haven't heard that
stronger.
about scar tissue, but I've heard that about bones. That if you break a bone,
Okay,
where it heals up is stronger than it was before.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know on when you weld pipe,
Right?
when you weld pipe or
Do
you
you
weld
have to talk
metal,
like that when you weld pipe?
always ain't weld unless you ain't talking right.
I,
I work with a lot of guys down south when I was doing that.
I grew
But
up where they were
the
welding pipe on and off, and they didn't sound like that. They sound slightly different, but
slightly different. But the point was that every break, it was what was fused together ended up being stronger than it
right,
was before. And when
right.
we have these breakdowns, or we have these major events, we evolve beyond them and come back
Mm-hmm.
stronger. The
Right.
one thing that holds us back most of the time is our story about what we went through,
Mm-hmm.
and the belief that we were traumatized in some way and that we can't get past it. And I think
Right.
that's where a lot of people they don't evolve beyond where they could, because they stay locked into what didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
I think that I totally agree with you though, Jay, about um, the illness and the sickness being an evolutionary tool
Right.
to move us beyond.
I suppose on some level that maybe it's possible that it's just, it exists on through many levels. Like on some level, it is just your body getting attacked by a critter on some level. But again, if you have, I don't know, I don't know, consciousness and a certain timing that converges, you could like take that and use it. Take getting sick and use it. If there's enough flexibility in your system, you can use it.
Yeah.
You can Aikido that
Yep.
shit.
Keto that shit.
You take it.
Explain explain that for the people. Why you said a keto?
Well, I don't know. I've never actually practiced Aikido, but what I gather from Aikido, it's a martial art of some sort. What I gather
Yep.
is they're always
Yep.
like, it's that one where
Yep.
you might see videos of people like where they have like they're being attacked by like one guy's being attacked by like seven dudes, and
Yep.
they're always sort of like taking the attacker's energy and sort of like turning it back, sort of like using their force and turning it
Yeah.
back around in this sort of
Yeah.
elegant way,
Yes.
sort of not like stopping it with brute force somehow, but like taking what's coming and then like turning it back around
Yes.
and using it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Using the energy of sickness to evolve into
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're evolving into.
Right. Yep. Well, I don't want to force the issue, but and I don't know what's the best way to go into it, but I'm interested in what if there's
Oh,
anything that your guides or whatever have to say about what we're talking about.
yeah, they do.
They do. All right.
They do. Mm. Mm. We have to say we appreciate how you have navigated this conversation so far. Understand we are always watching, always looking for opportunity to speak what we have to share in perhaps a unique way or in a different way that may appeal to other people who think differently from the way the two of you think. And so we will use this to illustrate the point that we would like to make is that, for example, we knew this meeting was happening today. We knew that you two would talk. We began spinning what we wanted to say into the thoughts you have to prompt you to arrive at this particular place in this particular meeting to speak of this particular subject so we could expound upon this in the ways that we desired to in order to bring these concepts to the people who need to hear them. If you look at all the facets of what we have just shared with you, you will see that it is multifaceted. You have multiple points of consciousness. You have multiple points of intention. You also have multiple recipients. Notice the difference between an intention and a recipient. An intention creates, it gets things moving. A recipient is that which receives, and in a sense, aikidos it back to the intention to allow the intention or that person who is intending to have an understanding of how their intending is affecting their life. In this way, you have completed the circle in which you were speaking of earlier. What we would like to share about in terms of disease and how you evolve with and through disease is that the timing of this is appropriate in so many ways because of what is happening on your planet today. And also, not just in terms of the disease, but in the evolutionary process of it all. One concept we must share with you is that when a decision has been made by the soul at any given level, none of that decision is ever predicated upon the readiness of the ego to proceed in such a direction. This happens on an individual level as well as a communal level. Understand that there are enough complexities to try to understand or to try to know how or conceptualize how an individual evolves, much less to try to explain it on a collective level that incorporates an entire planet. But that is exactly what we intend to do. Because understand that years ago, such concepts may not have made sense to individuals or to people. However, at this time, you have within you fractalized consciousness, and a consciousness that is capable of taking multiple points and coming up with a streamlined idea or concept of what those points are referring to. Thought is no longer linear. There are those who are clinging to it, and those people are not going to have the easiest go of it as time rolls on and moves forward. Those people will find themselves on the fringes, not understanding everyone else very well. This is one of the byproducts of what will happen, and this is also one of the main things we want to talk about when it comes to sickness or illness, is that you have within you parts of yourself, your soul, that have made the decision to move forward. Again, it does not matter what the ego wants, and therefore the ego gets left behind a little bit. The process thus becomes the intent to move forward, which is created in the soul and thus must be received by the recipient, which is the ego. Once the ego accepts and receives the information to evolve and to shift, the ego must determine how it is going to do this. Because the ego, in its own desperation to save itself and survive, will keep up. This is how evolution works. It is a constant determination by the ego to not die. Therefore, it evolves unwittingly according to what the soul dictates. The challenge therein for most humans is that they identify with the soul, and therefore they feel sorry for themselves when something occurs to them that they consider to be negative or not a part of what their ego had intended for them. Therefore, it is best to align your intentions with your soul. You will always move forward much faster when you align your ideas and your intentions with the soul. Granted, we said nothing about how comfortable this would be, because it's not. This is why not very many people choose to awaken quickly. It is why many choose many lifetimes to evolve through, because they don't want to have to deal with the discomfort of awakening completely in a singular lifetime. Though that is what is exactly upon your planet right now. You have many who have made the agreements to awaken rather quickly in a singular lifetime. Most have varying degrees to the extent to which they will awaken, but that is natural. So now we wish to apply this to the larger concept of humanity in general. Humanity itself has decided to wake up. It has decided to evolve and become that which it was not before, which means it becomes something new. In this awakening, there are so many of you who have decided to awake in a singular life. You are the ones who are pulling the masses of those who have not made such a decision. Therefore, because the collective soul has intended to awaken, and so many have responded with an affirmative to say, yes, I shall awaken in this lifetime. The intention has essentially been formed by those who have intended to awaken and thus need others to receive the awakening call. In other words, if you are someone who feels drawn to speak your truth, if you are someone who feels drawn to work on yourself, if you are someone who feels drawn to constantly improve, constantly share, and help others, You are sending the signal of intention to awaken to the soul collective of humanity. And you are essentially looking for those who can receive your call. Have you ever noticed how good it feels when you are doing your work and you are in your flow and someone you are working with has a breakthrough? There is more than just being validated for your practices that is occurring in these instances. It is fulfilling a soul's evolution, not just what you call a soul to soul evolution, but the soul of humanity's evolution. Understand as well, there are certain perks involved with awakening at this time versus awakening at any other time. During this time, there is a permeability that is built into the energetics of the planet and the human soul that enables you to have more access into the evolutionary processes that all souls have embarked upon on this planet that are not usually available to you. Therefore, what this means is that if you are a soul who has awakened in a specific way, time and time again, during this time, right now, you have access to the other souls who have chosen to awaken differently, using a different path. Understand also that this is quantum, which means it does not necessarily have to be a soul who lived in the past. You have access to the souls who will be living in what you call the future. The challenge here is how much breakdown can you live with within your own being in order to substantiate such a grand change in your own consciousness? How far are you willing to be broken down in order to grow back differently? How far are you willing to push the envelope? Because we promise you during this time, you have infinite receptors all around all of you who will be able to recognize what you are enduring, what you are going through, and whether they are conscious of your presence on this planet or not, they know it intuitively where you are at and what you are going through. And they lend their own wisdom to the collective and send it to you without even intending to. This is how it works in this new energy, this new collective energy. You are in a window of time where this energy flows very fluidly, very effortlessly. There will be a time where there is a certain solidification that will occur again within the collective and within that of the Earth's frequencies, which will set forth a path for humanity to follow. You are in the creation phases, in the creation time of that path right now. That which your soul longs for, yearns for, and is intending on a collective level is what is creating the trajectory that the next course of evolution humanity will walk through. You are currently all collectively creating your path. You are currently all scripting your own plays and your own experiences for multiple lifetimes to come. You are creating what the soul consciousness and soul field is evolving into. One of the grand beauties that you see within you right now, that you have occurring right now, is the oppression that you are all feeling with the coronavirus and the government's subsequent reactions to it. You have a very high degree of compression and stress that is being applied to the soul of humanity at this time. When there is compression and there is stress, an inevitable outcome is a strengthening of a desire to connect with that which is not disruptible. In other words, a unification with God. The purity of the desire being created at this time is helping to steer the course that humanity will take in its evolution over the next few thousand years. You are the seed bearers, the seed planters, and those who are creating the new earth. Be willing to be uncomfortable, to walk on shaky legs, and to step out in ways you have never stepped out before. This truly is the time to move forward in all endeavors that your heart has been longing for. The time is now. Are there any questions that you would like to ask?
I did have a question. What is it that decides the timing? You mentioned that timing is a big piece. What decides the timing? Timing of when we're ready.
The timing is always the most interesting thing to factor because the timing is the last consideration of all things that are quantum. In the world in which you dwell and live in, timing is considered to be paramount. Where we live and the place that we exist, timing does not exist. We do not consider such things. However, we also understand that you have a mind to satiate. Therefore, we can say that the way we see it, timing is another word for readiness. It is always predicated on readiness. If you want to break this down further, we can call it, or you could call it, frequency, matching frequency. There is a harmonic pulse continually radiating from your planet. This harmonic pulse is currently breathing potential, 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 potential. A soul, when it reaches a certain point of curiosity or evolution, hears that pulse of potential, 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 and asks, what is the potential? That very question is what signifies the readiness. The timing of it could best be explained by using your 100 monkey theory. That as soon as you have a number of souls who ask the question, what is the potential? It takes off, and that potential is made known. And the people who ask the question may not even know that they were asking, but what they do know is they wake up one morning, or they're driving in their automobile one afternoon, or they're having a conversation with a friend, and a unique idea pops up to them in the space between their thoughts, in the moments when they are not paying attention to new thoughts. And the new thought arises that they go, oh, that is a unique perspective. And they begin down a road they had never planned to journey down. But it all begins with that question. And the timing is always predicated upon the quorum that decides it's time to know what's possible. Do you have another question?
Sure. You were saying, I've been working on a book, and the thesis of my book is that pain is bound up intelligent energy. And one of the things that just wants to share its wisdom with us, that there's intelligence in that pain actually. And one of the things that I say in there is that, pain is like, it's almost necessary. Like it is um, pain is necessary for our growth. You said, Christ, he's like, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but crisis is sort of necessary to make us choose God. Crisis is necessary to make us choose the thing, the direction of our evolution. And someone that in the world of healing kind of said, no, pain is not always necessary, but that's one of the things that I had said in my book. Pain is sort of like, yeah, it's like necessary. It's like, yeah, pain is necessary. I can't say it any other way right now, but I wonder if that's true.
Pain is always about relationship. To one person, something is painful. To another, it is pleasurable. Pain is always about what is your relationship to your experience? Always. And so, a perspective we would like to share is that those who choose to experience pain are ultimately looking for distraction from the pain they experience all the time. If you are experiencing pain, it is because you always experience pain. We will give you a more practical example to help ground this. If you have a person who walks through life who is upset about the way they were raised by their parents and they have anger, they will manifest this anger. They will manifest relationships with other people where that anger is a predominant facet of the relationship. They will pick someone who evokes the same sort of emotional response as they experienced when they were growing up. And that emotional response is painful. It is ultimately a distraction or a compression of an energy that is already existing within the person's field. A compression or a distraction is always about condensing an experience into a focalized event so you can either surrender to it fully and allow it to give you the wisdom that resides within, or you continue to fight it and experience it over and over and over in varying degrees with different storylines. Pain, as so many refer to it, as challenge or as a distraction from real life or from your normal life, is there as a gift for those who need it. If you will notice, there is also always a balance that must occur between pain and pleasure. Those who require lots of pain in order to be distracted from their lives or to get to what is inside will also need an extreme amount of pleasure in order to balance that out. There are those who have evolved to a point of more love, more connection, more flow. Less degrees of distraction are necessary for these people in order to move through an event. That is to say, that if you are someone who is more aligned with love, that a very small degree of discomfort can feel extremely painful to that person. However, that distraction or discomfort is enough for that person to experience in order to either change their behaviors, change their consciousness, or shift that which is being asked of them to shift. Pain is always a compression of energy. It is always a stagnation point, whether it is underlying and been there for a long time or whether it is compressed into a very intense experience. It is always looking for a place to go because it does not want to be where it is any longer. It wants to go somewhere. It wants to cycle somewhere. It wants to evolve and shift somewhere. And this is where it is the feminine that is necessary at this time. Not the imbalanced feminine, the divine feminine. The divine feminine is capable of receiving all things, all degrees of pain. If you are following the logic of this dialogue and this meeting, you will quickly see that in order to resolve pain and move forward, you need a receptor. The divine feminine, when it is enlivened within a being, that being is full of reception. They can receive their own pain and send or transmute that pain to wherever that energy needed to or wants to go. And it is done so with the touch and the grace of God weaved within it. So when it goes where it needs to go, it is done so beautifully. We feel we have expounded plenty for today. We want to thank you for this opportunity to speak and to be heard. Can you see the cycle in that? They're bowing. Oh. Oh man.
What did that mean? The cycle in, what was that?
Can you see the cycle in that? Speak and be heard. Oh, it's funny, man.
They're jokesters, huh?
Yeah, tricksters. Well, they're not tricksters. They just like to have some fun.
Yeah. Huh. That's pretty, that is hit on a whole number of levels there for sure.
Yeah.
It was like sobering on one level. Because in the beginning there, they were just really like, you know, it's not necessarily going to be comfortable. How much discomfort can you are you willing to go through for the sake of waking up?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a sobering sword there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just a lot of just confirmation of what's coming through as I sort of like I'm working on this book that I'm working about how pain is bound up energy, and pain is a gift.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're saying how pain needs to be like, if you have a need for lots of pain, you also have a need for lots of pleasure. It makes me think of like addiction. You know, whether it's addiction.
Yeah, the intensity of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool stuff.
Hmm.
Well, we're done.
Right. Well, thank you for watching or listening to the New Consciousness Now show or podcast, wherever you listen to this. Jay Eaker, I can be found at biosoulintegration.com and wherever you do your social stuff. I have a YouTube channel, and you can find me in other social platforms. And Gail, you're found at Gail Wolf still, WULF.
Yeah, I've GailWolf.com is on its way. Which is an exciting adventure. I'm also on Catalyst Rising, which is my Facebook page, and that name will probably change here soon, but also have a YouTube channel, which is Gail Wolf, and this podcast and this video will be found at New Consciousness Now on YouTube. And what's our podcast broadcast going to be on? Is it SoundCloud or something?
No, I would just say you can be found wherever. It's going to be, people will be able to find it wherever they listen to podcasts. Stitcher, all the regular ones, Stitcher, iTunes.
Nice.
What are some of the other ones? Can you think of any of the other ones right now?
I don't know. I'm not a podcast guy.
Yeah, well, wherever you find your podcasts, you'll be able to find it.
Awesome.
New Consciousness Now podcast. Yeah.
New Consciousness Now. Cool.
I also do online sessions with people, and again, people can find that at biosoulintegration.com. And I know you do stuff with people online too, Gail, right?
I do. I do online sessions and distance
Readings and whatnot.
healings and readings and all the good stuff.
Uh-huh.
Kind of my regular shtick.
Right. Great.
Cool.
All right. Well, it's great hanging
Yep.
out with you, Gail, and great hanging out with everyone who's
Great hanging
watching.
out with you too, Dr. J.